there, welcome back to another video on my channel. Today we're going to be talking about something that I picked up on a couple videos ago during the whole Audra Winters drama thing. I know that I've already made like 2 videos on it. Well, not really on the drama. I made one initial video about the drama, and then I made an author advice video I thought of that was inspired by that. I'm doing that again. I might be milking this situation a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I just think there's so many things that new authors can learn from this particular situation that I wanted to talk about that again today. I wanted to specifically talk about editing and the need to kill your darlings. So if you're interested in that, just keep on watching. Okay, so first off, I changed my hair a bit. What do you guys think? Do you notice the little pops of blue underneath? I don't know. I felt like doing something a little bit different, and I just wanted to, because I used to have so many vivid colors. I had really, really short hair in my 20s, and I would dye my pixie cut all sorts of strange colors. So I felt like doing that again today, but doing that again in my 30s, but not as intense. So I still have my natural hair color everywhere, but I think I'm just going to do pops of color underneath here just for a little bit of funsies. Let me know if you like it down below. Anywho, I'm talking about editing today, and the importance of editing and the importance of making really, really tough decisions. So, kill your darlings. What does that mean? If you're unfamiliar with the phrase, killing your darlings refers to the need to cut scenes, dialogue, descriptions, characters sometimes, plot points in a story that just aren't serving it, but you have a really strong emotional attachment to them. Sometimes when we as authors get very fond of a particular aspect of our writing, especially on like a full-length novel or a book project, we kind of become fixated on something that we personally enjoy, but sometimes that interferes with our objective editing skills, right? Sometimes we need to be a little bit more objective and say, like, okay, put our own personal feelings aside and say, like, okay, is this part really helping or hindering my story? This can be extremely difficult to do. And I only bring this up in the Audra Winters case because before we were very critical of her editing. It seemed like in that book there wasn't really a lot of editing done, and that this was a project that was more written for the author than it was conveying a story to the reader. So, yes, one of the criticisms that this author received amidst all the drama and scandal that was going on was that she should have learned how to kill her darlings. This phrase or concept has been around for a while, so it didn't originate with her. This has been something that's been a thing for decades of within the writing world, but it just emphasizes the need for that for a lot of young writers. So, I just, again, I don't want to give you guys advice without like giving some sort of personal example, because I never want to seem like I'm above it. So let me just tell you a little bit about how I had to kill one of my darlings recently in something that I just put out. So this was released in the end of May, early June of this year. This is Cursed Images Social Media Madness. It is a short story collection revolving around some pop culture events and technology of the 2010s. I write a lot of nostalgia core. I like writing about whimsical things and techno horror and stuff like that. So my writing process when I do these short story collections that are very time specific and decade focused, I tend to like just do a bunch of research about trends that were popular at that time, either stuff from my own personal memory. Like initially I start off with things from my own personal memory, and then maybe I'll Google extra ideas just in case. So one of the ideas that I got first of all from this time, because I was trying to remember the time period, and it was kind of like a leftover idea from my first collection. My first collection took place in the early 2000s, and this one's in the 2010s, with silly bands. I don't know if you guys remember silly bands. The silly bands were these like little plastic or rubber, not plastic, they were more rubbery bracelets people used to wear, and they came in all these bright colors, and they looked kind of zigzaggy on your wrist, but then when you took them off they were in a specific shape of like a cartoon character or something like a skateboard or a microphone or something that was specific to an interest you might have had. They had like sea creature ones. I remember Justin Bieber had his own silly bands like specifically for him, just like stuff like that, right? So I remember silly bands being such a thing when I was probably more so in like middle school-ish. I graduated 8th grade in 2010, so it was like kind of on the cusp of those two. So already we're running into issues, right? It doesn't necessarily fit in with this decade more or less. Maybe it was in like 2009, 2010. I'm not sure. Already having issues. So I ended up writing because I was so inspired by this. And I was really inspired by the idea of how kids would wear so many silly bands up their arms to the point where like there was like some schools that banned them because A, they were distracting, but B, the kids were like cutting off their own circulation from wearing too many silly bands. And that was kind of like my light bulb moment to write a scary, because all my stories were scary, to write like a short story about that because that's like a scary concept, right? Fast forward, one of my first stories I completed for this collection that I was actually very proud of was a silly bands theme story with a bunch of kids in class, and it basically turned into a mummification ritual where this evil teacher lady who had like Anubis like qualities would take all the silly bands, confiscate them from the kids, and then took the bad kid that was starting this trend or whatever and mummified him with the silly bands himself. She basically like dipped them in resin, which I think like natural resins the Egyptians did use from a mummification, but also resin. It's kind of funny the way we use it nowadays to make a bunch of junky, glittery trinkets or whatever. So she uses this like resin to dip the silly bands in and then like cuts off the circulation and mummifies the boy alive and then completely wraps him in silly bands from like head to toe. I love that story. And I really wanted to include it in this collection because it's just so me. I like whimsical horror, nostalgic horror, things that are unexpected and twisty. So I was really disappointed when I ultimately had to make the decision to cut it from this collection. It just wasn't jiving with the other stories because a lot of these stories are very tech heavy. And even though that was definitely a pop culture trend and a toy trend from this time, it had no like electronic kind of elements to it. So what I did was basically instead of just deleting the story altogether, I cut it from the collection, moved it to its own separate file, and then with the intention of maybe one day submitting it to like an anthology or a separate project that needed stories as something I could put out for something else. Like I knew that this story will find its home one day, but right now its home is not in this collection. And that really, really hurt to do. You know what I mean? Because I was so fond of that story. I still am very fond of it. And it's not poorly written or anything that like that. It just was not meshing well with the other stories in this collection. Because like when you do a short story collection, it's about writing, but sometimes and editing, but also sometimes it's about curating. As an author, when you do a short story collection, you have to almost become a curator as well to make sure that the pieces you write actually do belong together. So that was an example of me having to kill one of my darlings. I was so sad about it. But I do think this story overall flows better, or this collection flows better overall. And there's still like fun, whimsical stories in this too, right? Like I'm just going to kind of go through them and like kind of just tell you what they're about so you can kind of see what I mean. So the first story called Yellow Star is about the end of the world in 2012, and that's kind of like sets the scene for the rest of the story. If you look at my previous short story collection, it started off with like Y2K, which is like the so-called apocalypse. I wanted to do it again because it's kind of funny how every now and then everyone feels like the world's ending. And I think that's going to be a common thread for other short stories collections I make. But anyway, so this first one starts off with the Mayan 2012 calendar prediction the world's going to end. The second one, Stan, is about boy bands and Stan culture and being dedicated to celebrity culture in general, which was I cannot illustrate to you how prevalent that was in the 2010s, even with boy bands, because now everybody talks about K-pop and BTS and stuff. They started way back when in the 2010s, but you also had like One Direction and Harry Styles, and especially like with Tumblr fan culture, it was very, very easy to become a little bit obsessive, I would say. And so I really wanted to write a story that played on those feelings. I have Catfish, which is about catfishing, which is like again started at this time where people were online pretending to be somebody that they really weren't. So that's fun. I have Slay Baby, which is about like TLC's Toddlers and Tiaras. I was obsessed with that show. Again, that's like television, so there's electronics, but it was also reality TV in the 2010s was just crazy. There's so much stuff on TV that like would not be appropriate to film anymore. So yeah, and then after that, Gotcha is about Google glasses. So again, like tech heavy. We have Forbidden Fruit, which is about eating Tide Pods and the Tide Pod Challenge. So another social media focused story that was about a pop culture phenomenon and somebody who actively records themselves doing stuff for attention online. Likewise, we have Gaffs, which is about like the clown epidemic of 2016, where everybody was like trying to go viral by dressing up as clowns and like scaring people. We have Turn the Freaking Frogs Gay, which is again based off a meme from Alex Jones. Is it Alex Jones? Yeah, it's Alex Jones. I don't know why I second guessed myself, but it's a little self-explanatory there. We have Wizards Only, which is about the Tumblr 4chan war and this idea of like magical thinking where people think that they can be witches because they learned some stuff online. I'm kind of throwing shade at myself here for that one. That's a little bit of a self-own. We have Lippy Sticks, which is about the beauty YouTuber era in the late 2010s. Jaclyn Hill's moldy lipsticks. So that's if you're like also into beauty, like because I was really into beauty YouTubers way back in the day. That'll be fun for you. Abora Gururama is a story about a Japanese yokai mixed with rideshare apps like Uber and stuff that came out during that time. 444 Page Not Found is about Club Penguin shutting down, which was a memorable event for everybody. And then Entropy is kind of like a conclusion of the first story mixed with some teasers from the previous collection. So yeah, now that I listed off everything from that collection, I'm sorry that might have been really wordy for you. Now that I listed all that off, you can see how the Silly Bands one didn't just quite fit because this collection is so tech heavy and social media focused. So yeah, it doesn't fit, but hopefully I'll find a home for the Silly Bands story sometime in the future. So circling back to Killing Your Darlings, I think some people might hear that and think that it seems pretty drastic or harsh to do that. I know when we're emotionally attached to something, it sucks to just kind of get rid of it altogether. If you feel like that step is too drastic for you, you can do what I did and just shelve something for another day, right? Mine is easy because it's a short story collection, but maybe yours is a specific scene from your book that you really like, but it doesn't work. So you shelve it and maybe you can incorporate that scene in a different story. Or likewise, maybe there's a character you're really, really fond of, but they just don't work or jive in the particular story you're trying to work on now. Maybe you save that character for a different project or write through that character's perspective for a whole other book in itself. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things where you don't necessarily have to completely like delete something from the entire universe, but it's important to really look at our work with a critical eye because it might not be working for a lot of reasons. Something that I tend to do, I'm very focused on pacing a lot of times when it comes to my stories, especially if it's a short story, because when you write a shorter fiction piece, every word counts. So and you only have so much time to really entertain the reader. So for me, if the pacing's off in my short story, that's something that you just have to trim or cut, even if it hurts your feelings. Like you have to do it because you need to keep the reader engaged for that short piece, right? It's something that should be bingeable to them and enjoyable. So, like with my Gaff story, I spent a long time reworking that one because the pacing was completely off. And I ended up getting rid of entire conversations between characters. I had a speaking character and I got rid of them to make them more of like a temporary role. I like reduced their importance a lot. So, yeah, you just have to look at things objectively. It helps if you have other people read it and point out these things to you. And so you kind of get opinions that are outside of your own head. That can be really helpful when it comes to killing your darlings. Having other people remind you that like this may be not as important as what you think it is. So yeah, it's helpful. And again, with editing, it's hard because like you don't necessarily have to take their advice if you don't want to. You have your own free will. You do not have to listen to every editor's feedback, but if they're all saying the same thing or if all your beta readers are saying the same thing, then the problem might be you, friend. And I'm so sorry to say that, but more than often that's the case. So yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to just like talk about today and kind of go on this little mini rant about killing your darlings. I know it's such a hard thing to do. I know, but I promise your writing will be better for it. If you have any questions specifically about editing, you can let me know in the comments down below. just to, if it wasn't clear from before, hi, I'm Cassidy. I'm an author. I have 4 books published, working on my 5th, and I've been self publishing for a couple years now. So I have a little bit of street cred when it comes to this kind of thing. So if you want any advice from me, you can ask me questions in the comments down below. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I just want to talk about this concept of editing. And I know editing is such a personal thing, and sometimes it can be really, really hard to emotionally detach from editing, but it's a necessary step. And I only bring this up because with the Audra Winters case, I think people are discussing the importance of editing once again, as kind of part of these author conversations again. And yeah, I want people to understand that like writing is completely personal and can be a very emotional process, but at the same time, if your job is to make something that's going to go out for the rest of the world, it's no longer just about you, and it's no longer like writing for yourself. If you're writing with the intention to publish and potentially sell your book, it can't necessarily be just about you anymore. And sometimes you're going to have to make really, really hard decisions when it comes to editing your story if you want it to be something that, I don't know, not like sellable to market, but just something that can be enjoyed by somebody other than yourself. You know what I mean? So yeah, and I think with Miss Audra Winters, this was a case that was like the opposite of right. This was somebody who was writing for themselves primarily, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just a completely different thing when you try to become a professional author, or like this person has stressed multiple times that they want to be based an entire business around this. You know, part of being a creative and part of being a business owner is receiving feedback from your readers and your customers, and making adjustments moving forward, right? So this is a process, especially with any creative field, where people with egos sometimes it's really hard for them to succeed in these sorts of spaces. I mean, I guess because you always hear horror stories of like Hollywood people or some people being complete divas and having really big egos. So I don't know, but I would just say that like if you want to genuinely connect with readers and make a lasting impression on them, it helps to make something with them in mind, something that's not just enjoyable for you, but something that other people would enjoy too. So yeah, I'm gonna get off my soapbox a minute because I know this is my 3rd video that like references this person, and I don't want to come off as somebody who's like milking the situation or like really berating them, because I'm not. I'm just trying to like use this as an example to illustrate a further point. I have one more video that was inspired by this Audra Winter situation that I'm going to put out next week. But after that, I think I'm going to chill. After that, I think I'm going to chill. At that point, I think I would have said everything that I wanted to say. I know there's been more updates since my original video, and I know since then that they've hired a new editor who has come online and done like Q&As and stuff like that. I wish them the best of luck. There's some things that have been said by this editor that make me worry a little bit, but again, at the end of the day, it's none of my business. This is going to be something like their own project, their own thing. And it's something that doesn't speak to me, so I probably won't be a reader for this. But if they do have a strong readership base, like that's great. More success to them, you know what I mean? Ultimately, I want everybody to succeed. So I hope this editor does their job and makes a fantastic product. But just for me, I think there's just been so much tumultuous energy behind this project that I won't be partaking in it, but if you choose to, more power to you, I guess. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful to you in a way. I hope you've learned something from it again. And like I said, if you're cutting things but you don't necessarily have like the energy to completely delete it, maybe just make a dumpster file and put everything into the dumpster, and then maybe recycle that material for future projects. That's something that somebody else left on my original video when it came to editing. They had that suggestion about saving things for the future, and I thought that was a great point because again, like obviously I did that with my silly band story. I'm saving it for the future. So don't be discouraged if you find yourself in this position with editing and it's bringing up a lot of negative emotions, but there's ways to work with them. And yeah, I think maybe I'll make a video in the future that's more about like mental health and writing, or dealing with big emotions in writing. stuff like that. So be on the lookout for that. I just want to say thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, feel free to like the video, comment down below, share with a friend, or subscribe to the channel. Please, please, please. That would help me out a lot. I also now have a membership program, and I just want to talk about that because I'm planning on doing co-working live streams for my members where we actively, like, I go live and I'm actively working on something at the same time somebody else is. And that way, like, while we're working, we can ask each other questions, we can get feedback from each other, something that feels a little interpersonal, for especially for folks who are interested in writing specifically, who would like a little extra guidance. That could be a great option for you as well. So be on the lookout for my memberships. I'll have a join link in the comments down below. And until next time, thanks. Bye.